Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you, everybody who's able to join us today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm John McGarvey. I'm one of the co-founders here at DAO Labs. Very much involved from a marketing and sales business development side of our business. And I'm proud to be able to spend a few moments with you guys to just share some insights and some recommendations from what we've witnessed, recommended, perceived, thought about in the world of this crazy time we find ourselves in. I've met a lot of you out there, and if I haven't, I hope to meet more of you in the days, months, times ahead when I can get back on the road and shake hands and be able to kind of engage more with our community. The purpose of today's webinar is to talk a little bit about recommendations that I have personally come up with for the acupuncture and practitioner community in the world of sort of COVID pandemic stuff. This is not a commercial for DAO Labs. We will not be talking about herbal formulas at all during today's sort of lecture, and I'm going to try to keep it, pardon me, as fluid and as fast as possible, with the idea that you can follow up offline after the fact to get a copy of the slides I'll walk through, or to talk about any of the recommendations in more detail. But to be sure, these are my perceptions. And while they do, I feel, apply to the kind of global community of acupuncturists, they might not be a total fit for what you do with your patients and the way you interact with clients, and try to make sure that your patients are feeling the sort of love, the comfort level that you're used to providing. So they're very general. But again, they come from what I've gathered and speaking with a lot of acupuncturists over the last several weeks and whatnot. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully this works and you can see it. And through the power of technology, Eureka, there I am in the corner and there's the screen. So today's lecture is called Herbs, Emails, and Patient Engagement in Uncertain Times, which obviously we do find ourselves in. They're marketing recommendations and tactics that I think will land with a lot of the crew here today, but again, they're very general. We're not going to go over a DAO Labs overview. We forgot to pull the slide, but we will talk a little bit about some marketing recommendations just in general. Some of you have taken or participated in the lectures I've given at some of the acupuncture schools across the country, so some of this might be a little bit familiar. We won't spend way too much time on any one point or just strategy in general. Spend more time on the tactics, but there are some best practices that I think are relevant or good reminders given kind of, again, the world we find ourselves in. We all know our mission statement. We deliver wellness through the power of Chinese medicine. And as I pointed out at the top of the sort of the lecture here, I'm not an acupuncturist. I'm on the sales, business, and marketing side. But we have Dr. Eric Karchmer, who's my colleague. He's giving webinars right now through the COVID time about once a week. So if you're not familiar with those, I would invite you to check in, read the pulse, or check in with Jen, who I'll talk about here in a second. There's a lot of great content out there, which we will speak about content strategy a little bit. A lot of it comes from Eric. It's designed to speak to you and your patients. He's a pretty smart guy, so some of it does go over my head, but it's good stuff as it relates to herbal methodology, herbal background and whatnot, particularly as it relates to our formulas. And then he also interweaves a lot of acupuncture recommendations in there as well. Again, Eric's our Chief Chinese Medicine Officer. And then we have Jen Ward, who I think a lot of you have interacted with. Jen is on the business development lead, sort of our practitioner initiatives. And she's a licensed acupuncturist herself. And so a lot of the things that you see coming out of DAO Labs right now from a marketing standpoint are really coming from the lens of Jen, who's practicing acupuncture, but then also works on a marketing sales capacity for DAO Labs as well. We've got the Pulse. We just launched a new newsletter called The Practice, which has some great stuff in there. So do look out for that. And then as well, she is just a good person to connect with about how to present, DAO Labs or other herbal medicines in your practice. And at any time, you can reach out to her, Jen, at mydowlabs.com. Finally, we won't spend too much time on this, but just a nod to who we are from a value standpoint, with one specifically being a shared experience. We mean that wholeheartedly, and with everything going on right now in the world, we feel that we can be a resource, we can be a friend, we can be an advocate, we can be a strategist, we can be a partner for you and with what you're kind of trying to navigate through in these really weird, wacky times. So if after this webinar you want to follow up with me or Jen or Eric, you do know how to contact us, hopefully, and then as well know that we'll spend the time to work with you, because this is a partnership that we firmly believe in. Oh, Did I say I wouldn't talk about herbs? I won't. It's not a commercial for DAO Labs, but we do want to remind you that there is a place, and this will come up later on in the lecture. There's a place for, we think, what we're doing right now as it relates to, your patients not being able to get into the practices, and your practices in some case, and being the sort of bridge for how can you help them, or obviously, treat, which we can't say during these times. Don't forget that we do have formulas with some very powerful social proof at this juncture, both from the practitioner world and then from your patient and consumer side as well. And so we just want to kind of draw attention to that. So let's just very quickly start with the marketing check-in. I'm going to take a quick swig of water here as we dive into this. And I'm not going to spend too much time because there's a longer lecture that kind of builds up to this portion of the talk. But as we're kind of refiguring out what's going on with our practices and interaction with patients and just interaction with the world around us, it's just a good touchstone reminder that we're all marketers in some capacity. I'm a marketer, Jen Ward's a marketer. My sister, who's an interior designer in New York City, is a marketer. At some point, we all have got to align what we do with the people on the other end of it. And it can be acupuncture, it can be herbs, it can be painting houses, whatnot. But right now in particular, we've got to think, I feel, more strategically and be willing to adapt given the changing nature of what's going on in the world of the acupuncture community at large. And as I put in there, timing is everything. Marketers are everybody, including acupuncturists, but from a timing standpoint, and we'll talk about this in a second, even though a lot of practices are closed right now, there is a tremendous opportunity to continue to deliver wealth, wellness, health, and to provide, solutions that people are looking for. Because right now, if we look at trends outside of the world of acupuncture, we can't get to our doctors as much. But if we look at the sort of trends within dietary supplements in general, man, oh man, there's just never been like a better time to be in the category of delivering health and wellness. And it's for obvious reasons. People are trying to defend themselves. They've gotten off of their schedules. They want to go back to health and wellness goals and all that kind of stuff. And so everyone's trying to figure this out. And so the timing of what the acupuncture community does in this wonderful practice, it's right there for us to align with what people are looking for, but we have to adapt. And that's, again, what we're going to talk about a little bit. I talk about here right now, the world is obviously changing. I was with an acupuncturist earlier today who isn't able to open his practice because he was home teaching the kids because the wife was at the office, and it's just one of these bizarre sort of moments. So how are we going to kind of adapt to the changing nature? And it always goes back to a simple, like, we got to have some type of a plan, which is at the heart of a marketing plan to begin with, is just like a sort of an action document to kind of get us through this. Marketing always comes down to the what and the when. What are we going to do? And then when are we going to do it? And then there's always the issue of what we'll talk about here in a second, the priorities. Is this a great time to be out front putting a new awning on the practice? Or should our time be better spent right now working on some sort of virtual or digital solution that can ultimately encompass, painting the outside of the practice or putting a new awning out there? But the priority and when we're going to do things right now is so entirely important. I would also say that deciding what not to do is equally as important because, we're all single shingles out there in some regard, working from our kitchen tables or back at the practice or whatnot. And so you're kind of out there, and it's ample time for the gears to spin. And, especially when there's a lot of idle time, well, I could be doing this, I could be doing this, I could be doing this. At the end of the day, we've got to prioritize what we're going to do and what we're not going to do. And this slide, sort of talks about that. The prioritization is incredibly important, especially when it comes down to a lot of tactical things. I could send out emails, I could go knock door to door, I could do all these different things, but you only have so much time and obviously, resources at your disposal. So kind of figuring those things out right now in particular is as important as it's ever been, because it's just a different nature with the time and the resources that we have at our disposal and the way that we're interacting with patients, clients, our friends and family, all of those things. So I'd invite you, as you're thinking about how you're spending your time right now and trying to talk about your practice and the practice of Chinese medicine, be it acupuncture or herbs or whatnot, is just thinking very, very, very earnestly about sort of what it is and when we're going to do it, and also what you can do and where you're going to get the very best results. As like everything in marketing and in life, it's always helpful to have a goal. And I always come back to this when I'm doing a marketing lecture, because we've got to have some sort of outcome. We talk about this all the time at DAO Labs. If we're going to do something, what do we expect to see at the end of it? And how do we measure that? We don't have to measure everything, but we've got to have some sort of a true north of what it is that we're trying to accomplish. And so we always go back to this acronym of having a SMART goal, something that's specific, something that's measurable, something that's actionable, and something that's very time specific. I will increase my email list by 100 people by next month. It's very specific. You're telling yourself what you're going to do, how you're going to measure it, and the timestamp around doing that. In the absence of that, we're just going to run in circles. We're going to try a bunch of things. We're not going to know at any time what's working and what's not working. And so even though this applies to marketing, it can apply to other aspects of your practice as well, or your life for that matter. So whenever we set forth a goal, we always want to think, what are we trying to achieve? And when will we know if we've achieved it, and at what time period? As I put down there, having too many goals is a problem. It's always kind of in like the broader sense of the sort of marketing plan. I only have a handful. I put 2 here, probably 3 to 4 is okay, but at the end of the day, we want to make them very specific, actionable, and time bound. And then finally, I think right now is a very important time to be focusing on the foundation of what it is that you want to achieve both in the short term and what it is you want to achieve in the long term. Why did you get into this practice to begin with? And it's probably because you wanted to help people. And so there's different ways to help people now, and there's going to be different ways that will evolve that we'll talk about here in the years to come. But it's a really great time if you have idle capacity to go back to what is your mission statement? What's your true north of why you got in this to begin with? And then finally, like, what is it you want to achieve? And that right now might be like, let's just get the lights on and sustainable. It might be an opportunity to say, hey, you know what? I'm not as busy, so let me go knock on some doors or pursue some relationships to help market my practice that I've kind of been putting off. It might be, you know what, at this juncture, maybe it's time for me to collaborate with somebody else, because of my truest sort of sense of what I want to do is I want to continue my acupuncture practice, but I want to have a bit more flexibility longer term. So really think about those types of things. And then as well, I would kind of refocus and draw back to sort of what was the area and the specialty that you kind of pursued when you opened your practice to begin with. What is it? Is it fertility? Is it joint pain? Is it general wellness? Do you want to speak to a certain type of audience member? It's a great opportunity right now to kind of go back and what is that true north of your practice and why you got into this, and then how do you put that from a marketing standpoint, which we'll talk about here in a second, into action. So without further ado, one more slide before I continue on. This one's a tough one for me. Ask anybody that works for me. When in doubt, always keep it simple, okay? Keep things simple. Keeping things simple can be hard because complexity sometimes is easier. We got to do this, and we got to do this, and we got to do this, we got to do this. It's opposed to like actually saying, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do it right now. Keep it simple, and ultimately, I think you'll find with the right focus and prioritization, you'll find that you're just getting a lot more done, okay? And then finally, right now, sometimes done is better than perfect, okay? Things are changing so fast. You see businesses evolving all the time, and I use the word business interchangeably with practice. It's just changing so dramatically quickly, and just being able to keep up with sort of the evolving nature of how people are, collecting information right now, consuming it, embracing it, and the way they're going about their lives, getting out of the house or staying in the house, or kids are at the kitchen table while I'm trying to work, all those types of things. Ultimately, you've got to get a lot done or be able to pivot, and getting it done and out there sometimes is better than saying, you know what, I got to spend 6 months working on this plan of attack. And just right now, just kind of keep moving is what I recommend. So with that in mind, we'll bring it to the tactics and what we want to talk about. And I will try to go through this quickly in the interest of your time. There's going to be 5 tactics that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about your website a little bit. We're going to talk about your email strategy, and I don't want you to overlook that right now. We're talking about our favorite topic in the world, Zoom. Finally, we'll wrap it up with a little bit of a discussion around content and how you can be effectively using content right now. And then also, we wouldn't be doing justice to the world of marketing if we didn't talk a little bit about social media. Okay, so with that in mind, we're going to start talking about, as I mentioned earlier, the need to pivot and innovate and adjust, particularly if you went from having 50 patients a week to only having, 10 or 15, or maybe less, maybe more. But as I mentioned as well, the need for health and wellness remains. We see that in trends in the dietary supplement world. And then you can read about it with the backlog of those elective surgeries that are out there that people are, starting to kind of get back in and wanting to pursue. It's just like this bottleneck. So people are out there, they're looking for stuff that acupuncturists, Chinese medicine doctors can provide. Quick sip of water. So as we embrace the changing nature of what's going on in the world, we always want to come back at least have a presence on the World Wide Web. Thank you, Al Gore. Was that the internet or the World Wide Web? Can't remember. Here's a thesis from John McGarvey, be it right or be it wrong. I think a new theme that's going to be emerging from all this is cleanliness, and it's going to be safety. And we're seeing that already with the airlines bending over backwards to tell you how they're vaporizing the planes, and Clorox is buying Delta and all this kind of stuff. I think they're touching something that's going to be really, really, really important with people. And that is they want to make sure that the environment and the world they're interacting with is safe and clean. And I think some of that right now, as it relates to both your content and your communication strategy, is going to be really important. And having the appropriate sort of COVID sort of statement, or just the general wellness statement about your practice, intermittent throughout sort of your marketing toolkit, is going to be really, really important. I think as well, the ease of being able to connect with you is going to be really important. The ability to schedule appointments in a very efficient manner is going to be really important. And then as well, the ability to kind of find what they need very efficiently. A website does not have to be overbearing. It doesn't have to have a million pages. It doesn't have to have a lot of stuff, but I think there's some stuff that is really, really important that if you don't have on your site right now, needs to be included in there. I grabbed this from Molly Rhodes, who's a practitioner we work with down in Sarasota, Florida. It's a great site. And when you dig into it, she does talk about what's going on with her sort of COVID policy to get into her practice, and a statement around, you know, her focus on cleanliness. And then I think just as importantly, it's got the big book here button at the top. And if you don't have that feature, it's really easy depending on the type of platform you're on, be it a WordPress or Wix. There's all sorts of apps that you should be able to plug in to accomplish that. And again, I just think it's really important for people to be able to schedule with you in a way that, you know, doesn't take up a lot of time, because people are frantic right now. If you're looking for another great site, check out our friend Liz Carlson's site in New York City, Common Point, acupuncture.com. Great site. I was on it earlier today, just kind of snooping around, and she's got it all right there. It's the schedule, it's got her COVID policy, and it's pretty clean and pretty straightforward. So again, as a time that we're kind of reevaluating a lot of things, just make sure that given how people are interacting with the world around them, that your site is up to speed, and that's good. We're going to talk a bit more about content strategy in a little bit, which will kind of go back to your website here in a minute. Email marketing, I know we get flooded with emails. Some of you have told us too many come from DAO Labs. We are responsive to that. We're aware of it. But it's really important now, as you're starting to open up and the world is starting to open up, that you have, you know, the right communication strategy, obviously, to begin with. And a lot of that's going to start with your emails. I'd invite you to take a look at Dr. Hillary Patzer's website and her emails, pardon me. She's a practitioner friend of ours here in Minneapolis. She sends out some great emails that I'm going to talk about here in a second. But going back to sort of the needs that people have right now, it's, you know, quick information. It's the priority of like clean, safety, all those types of things. And doing things to, you know, bolster your practice with people that may have faded away over the last 5 to 6 months because of COVID. How can you measure trying to get 5 patients back in to your practice that you've lost touch with because the world has dramatically changed? But go back, they're still looking for health and wellness. They're looking to defend themselves. They're looking for preventative health. They're looking for all those things. How can you use email, short of calling everybody, to kind of communicate effectively with those people? Make sure your emails have really strong calls to action, CTAs in there. You know, what do you want them to do? Is it book now? Is it read now? Is it try this herb now? You know, what do you want your reader to do within the context of the email that you're kind of working so hard to send out? And I want to mention, I'm going to put some resources at the end of this discussion, both for email marketing, digital marketing, all sorts of stuff that I'd invite you to take a look at. Good content always wins. We're flooded with emails, as we all know. It's 1:23 as I record this, and I've probably gotten 9 emails already today from Banana Republic. And so like, I don't read any of them. Whereas if you're really strategic and selective, and so you know that when I receive an email from you, pardon me, that your reader gets an email from you, it's got good stuff in there, it's actionable, and it kind of gets to the point. You know, you're not wasting their time. So make sure you're nurturing and harvesting your email list and using it effectively. All right, everyone's favorite topic, Zoom. I'm coming to you today on Zoom. Let me share with you just a very quick personal narrative. I've got a friend who works for a large healthcare company. The amount of dollars that are being thrown, according to this person, to telehealth right now is overwhelming. It was coming before all this started, but boy, oh boy, is it going to come afterwards. even beyond when we get through this. I remember earlier this year, I was coming down with what I thought was a sore throat or strep throat. I didn't go to CVS. Of course, I went to the herbal pantry as well. But to connect with a doctor, I didn't have to go to CVS. It was my first experience with telemedicine. And man, was it not convenient. I didn't have to wait in line. I could sit in the comfort of my own house. It was pretty incredible. Here's why I'm mentioning this. There's never going to be a day that you're going to administer acupuncture over a Zoom call. But there is going to be the need to connect with people, both through this current sort of pandemic and beyond, virtually, because that's the way behaviorally I think a lot of people are going to want to interact, based on time, based on the fact that they're getting used to it, all those types of things. I'm not saying right now get some sort of virtual consultation policy going, but what I am recommending is that you get comfortable working with Zoom, both in terms of staring, in this case, at the green light, figuring out how to make it work, which I still fuddle around with, but being able to kind of bring people in, put them in rooms privately, all those matters. And then as well, just some other best practices, how to speak slowly, which I don't do a great job at, how to elevate your camera. As I said, look at the green light. There's all sorts of things that you could be doing right now, even if you're closed, to connect to people that are seeking the services that you have. Remember the discussion earlier about the connection of the product or service with the people that want them? People right now want to be healthy. They want to remain safe. And so there's other things that you could be doing. You could be doing tongue examinations. You could be doing some dietary therapy. You could be doing herbal therapy as well. My point is that if you haven't given any sort of credence to like working with Zoom or another sort of visual FaceTime platform, I really invite you to kind of get comfortable with it. Next, we're going to talk about content. This is our friend Nell, Dr. Nell out in California. It's always a good thing to be working on content because people want to read and hear and learn. It might not always be in long epistles like my colleague, Dr. Eric Karchmer writes out, but people do have a need to kind of understand, learn, they're curious, all those types of things. Ultimately, when you think about your content strategy, what is it that you think people want to know? And then how do you answer that question? I'll talk through a great resource at the end of it, but great content really answers a question. It piques a response to a piqued interest in your readers. And it also helps from an SEO standpoint. And I'll talk about SEO here in just one quick second. Think about a couple of different things. How do they want to consume content? Is it written? Do you want to do a quick video on Instagram TV about it? Do you want to recycle it into an email? Do you want to spend hours writing an ebook? And they're not that hard, by the way. If you've got idle capacity, content at the end of the day can be incredibly valuable to both your practice's brand and your personal brand in ways that in other webinars we can talk about as far as making sure kind of Google knows you're out there strategically. And then as well, so you've got a deliverable that you can hand off to people at some point in your practice's history as well. So whenever you write or create a piece of content, you want to make sure that you're sort of using it several different ways. I talk about here, you can use it in emails, and Facebook, and whatnot. But then as well, you want to make sure that it's written from an SEO perspective too. Make sure it's got some sort of connection to you geographically if you can. So if you're in Minneapolis, Minnesota, within sort of either your headline or the top portion, you've got that kind of included in there. And then as well, that it's got, pardon me, some reference to acupuncture, Chinese medicine. What we ultimately want to do is we want Google to know that your website, which is where a lot of this content will end up living, Google recognizes that you are in Minneapolis, Minnesota as an acupuncturist. So you come up in organic searches. Finally, we wouldn't be doing justice to this discussion. I'm going to try to wrap it up here. If we didn't think a little bit about social media. We did a lecture last week, Jen did, earlier this week about TikTok and Chinese medicine. I don't know anything about it, so don't ask me, but it's an opportunity right now if you've got idle capacity to be communicating the content that you've created or responding to your patient's needs in a way that, again, connects with how they're kind of absorbing information. We would not recommend that you kind of overextend yourself on any, a little bit of across all platforms. So don't feel that you have to do Pinterest, Facebook, Instagram. We've taken a focus on a couple of platforms and really done a deep dive in those while we're kind of watching what's going on around us. But as I put in this slide here, there's our friend Jennifer Tom out in San Diego. And what is she talking about? She's talking about her COVID policy And she's also letting her patients and her followers know that she's open. Some of the very, very best Facebook posts, pardon me, Instagram posts out there, because a lot of people are absorbing, information on Instagram, are those that say things like, I'm open, I have openings, I have a COVID policy. They're not necessarily always the beautiful laydowns. So while we want to visually make things look good, we can also use these sort of resources to be highly functional at the same time. And then finally, there is no finally. Oh, there is some finally. And I think I'm getting some messages, although I'll figure out how to respond to those in a second. I wanted just to say a few different things when it goes back to marketing, what's going on. As I said, keep it simple. Keep it focused, keep it goal-oriented. But what can we learn from other industries as we're kind of going through these wacky, wild times? What is the dental industry doing to kind of let the world know that they're back up and running? If there's one group that is really well organized from a marketing perspective, as I've gone through life, it is the dental industry, both in terms of new patient acquisition, and then as well trying to create more of an experience out of sort of that relationship than just the functionality out of it. And that's an industry that's gotten beaten down pretty hard throughout the pandemic, but it's roaring back. Ditto with the mental health industry. I read something last week in the New York Times that therapists and psychologists, psychiatrists are just right now busy beyond belief because people need them. So what are some of those industries doing to kind of get out there and let people know that they are open for business in a safe manner? And some of that, of course, is virtual, but as well, there's a lot of one-on-one stuff going on. Point of all this is, what else can we learn? So we're not just entirely insular to kind of what's going on in this community, but other sort of modalities in the health and wellness arena. When possible, grab a partner to help. That's what we're here for. Your sort of support of DAO Labs since we started has been overwhelming. And as a sort of a give back is to be able to do webinars like this, whether it's helpful or not, just be a sounding board to make some recommendations, to kind of come up with a plan, all these types of things. I would also mention there's a picture of our resource room on the slide here. We have all sorts of stuff that is packaged up and ready for you to use. Our content is yours to use. We have images, we have more tutorials, all those types of things. So other companies out there and other suppliers to the industry have those as well. So rely on those groups because in some cases they've just had a lot more experience, or their perspective on sort of what's going on is a bit deeper because they're talking to people outside of your community. And then, pardon me, last point that I've got on here is imitation is a form of flattery. I will tell you that the emails we sent out from DAO Labs are inspired by a company that has nothing to do with the Chinese medicine world. We've just identified this particular company as somebody that does email marketing really effectively, and we've followed it. And we'd like to say that we've kind of created everything on our own, but the reality is we haven't. So if you see other websites out there from other acupuncturists, I referenced a few, as good boilerplates, like utilize those. There's a reason that things in the world of digital marketing and digital advertising look the same way. It's because we're conditioned at this juncture to know what a website looks like or what an email, how it's supposed to flow. So don't overlook, don't think you have to recreate, just kind of think about other practitioners, brands, companies that you like that feel good for your true north. And there's nothing to say you can't just borrow some of their best work. It is a form of flattery. Whew. Are you with me so far? Here's the last slide. A couple of resources for you. Number one, there's a company called, there's a website called Upwork. If you're looking for help for all sorts of things, it could be everything from back office support, it's marketing, it's coding, it's all sorts of freelance resources under the sun. Make sure you check that out. We have used them extensively throughout our time at building DAO Labs. We get asked this question all the time. Is there an email platform you would recommend? We don't use MailChimp anymore. We used to. We use sort of a bigger platform now, but MailChimp is a really good one to use. If you're looking to figure out how to create an email newsletter, I'm going to go ahead and get a sip of water here. It's pretty good. And there are free templates that you can plug and play your information into. There's all sorts of tutorials. It would be one that I would take a look at, and I think their subscription plans for a small amount of emails are pretty nominal. I would say I get no dollars, endorsements, affiliate links, or any of that kind of stuff from this stuff. It's just recommendations. And then here's kind of a unique guy that we followed for a long time who's got all sorts of great ideas. And it's this guy that you can find at ProBlogger.com. His name is Darren Rouse. There's great stuff in there for just writing blogs, how to do, if you wanted to do a webinar, how to conduct those, tools and tricks, all those types of things. And then last but not least, we've got DAO Labs. We're here for you. It's our fourth value as a company. As I mentioned, there's the resource room. We're actually reworking that right now. There's some great stuff in the works that Jen and her crew are spearheading. So be on the lookout, but there's all sorts of stuff that if you need content, if you need more training, both on herbs or marketing, it's all in there for you. So do check that out. And do I have a final slide? Oh, next steps. Keep in touch, obviously. We're here for you. If you need samples, some of you out there are always asking for more samples. Check in with our friend Jen, my colleague, who is available to speak with you just about any hour of the day. And then finally, as I said, set a goal, okay? Keep it smart and hang in there. We will get through this, I hope. We will get through this. The trends that we're seeing in the world of dietary supplement sales and other trends within the medical community bode very well. I mean, there's always this need for health and wellness. Boy, I got it. And now is no different. It's almost more so. People are very scared and they want to keep healthy. And the good thing is we're involved with the practice in a community that provides wonderful solutions for that. That's it. I'm going to figure out how to turn this off. Look forward to being in touch. Thanks for listening. And if you've got further questions, just shoot us a note. Thanks so much.